All right, welcome to the video, everyone. Thanks so much for coming by. It's Chris Petri. We're going to have a fun time. We're going to have a great time, actually, creating this beautiful vacation painting. So this is a photograph. My brother gave me some vacation photos. I said, hey, broski, I need some, subject matter for my next video. He said, I have some great vacation photographs from Australia. And I was just there a couple years ago. Here, check these out. And he sent me over a few. So I have all the paints, the brushes ready to go. You're going to learn all the colors we're going to use, what brushes we use, what paper we use. We have our pencils, our rulers. We have all this information here right in this video to help you create this beautiful vacation type scene, which is a kind of a seascape scene with boats, sunset. It's kind of got all the exciting things you want to have in a painting. And we're going to have a great time doing it. So get ready. We're going to start in just a second. We'll go through each step of the way so that you can create this painting. And okay, we're going to be right back and get started. Okay, so we're going to move along here. We just saw the finished painting, and of course, we're talking our vacation photos. And this happens to be, again, my brother sent me this photo over the weekend. I asked him if he had any vacation photos. This is in Australia, and I guess he was there about 2 or 3 years ago, I believe. And so this is just a perfect photo for painting. The lights, beautiful sunset scene, boats on the beautiful water, the ocean here. And so we're going to do this and go step by step as we go. So we kind of can just follow along in the process. You know, we have good light here, some really bright light across the center of the picture frame. And we might leave that on white paper, and then we lighten it up as we go, and then darken it up at the top of the sky. And then the same thing with the water. The reflection just works the same. The water will be more lit over here on the right side because we have a little more light over here. And then over here on the sky, there's less light showing above the mountains. So we'll have a little less light on this side of the water. And of course, we're going to render in some simple sailboats in this scene. But we're not going to go maybe as detailed as this. Like with watercolor, let's maybe minimize the details just a little bit. Make it kind of more of like a abstract type of painting where we're not going to get into extreme details. I think it's more fun to paint it that way. And it'll wind up looking like a nice, gorgeous Winslow Homer painting, where he did those beautiful seascapes and boats and, pretty much did them on location. So we're going to use a photograph here. But in any case, let's get started. So I'm just going to hit the pause button, essentially, and I'll get the paper and the palette set up, and we'll get ready to go here. All right, be back in just a second. All right, so now we're set up here. We have the palette. We have my normal Schmincke palette, fresh squeeze tube paints here. If anybody ever wants to look up my palette information, my colors, I have a treasure trove of videos on colors and palettes, paint colors, what brands I use, what palettes I use. I use different palettes. I use this one predominantly for YouTube, my Schmincke palette, but I also have several other palettes that I do show on my previous videos on YouTube. So if you just type in my name, Chris Petri, and then you type in palette, P-A-L-E-T-T-E, Chris Petri, palette, simple as that. You type that into the YouTube search and hit go, and you'll see I have like probably 10 or more videos on all my colors, palettes, even brushes, paper, the whole deal. And, you can't go wrong with that. So this way you can kind of custom tailor what colors you use in your palettes if you want to, or maybe you like a specific brand other than what I use. That's fine too. There's a lot of great brands of color out there. So no worries on that. But these are just the basic colors I use. I've been using these colors for my palette for like over 10 years, probably even 12, I think 12, maybe 12 or more years. I think when I first started, I experimented with more colors. And then I just started getting more focused on kind of just using what I felt were my few professional artists that I was following on a regular basis. I just said, let me stick with their palettes. If they're professionals and they've been in painting for 20, 30, 40 years, I'll stick with what they use. It's got to be good. And that's just how I kind of viewed it. So in any case, let's get started with our vacation painting. Beautiful sunset with some boats. And it was, again, in Australia. My brother gave me some beautiful vacation photos to work with. And I left the photo off camera because it's a dark photo. It's got like a sunset or like a darker sunset feel to it. So I really don't feel we're going to benefit if we leave it on camera, but you did see it in the beginning of the video just a few minutes ago. And then you can also hit pause and work from the photograph there. Or you can also work from my finished painting, which is at the very, very beginning of the video or toward the end of the video. So it's up to you, or you can just work along as we go here and kind of develop your painting at the same time I'm working and kind of do the same process as we go. And maybe that's, I know all of you use different methods on how you like to paint and work along with my videos, so I leave that up to you. You're the artist. You figure out those things as you go and what works best for you. Everyone's different. Everyone thinks differently, processes information differently. Everyone's brains work differently. So I'm just going to keep working along here. I'll just maybe take a little damp paper towel and I'm going to just do a little bit of cleanup on the palette here. And you can leave some of that leftover paint in there. That's not a big deal, really, especially since we have a lot of dark colors in this painting, or more, the tonal values are kind of dark in this painting. So you'll notice that we're not going to be using a lot of light washes, really. So, but we are going to leave some white paper on the in the painting. So let's get our basic sketch in of what we're going to do, our sketch lines. This is not really like a painting where we're going to do a lot of detailed drawing. We're just basically going to get our horizon line where the edge of the ocean water is and mountains, and then from there we're fine. We have everything else will fall into place. So the first thing I'm going to do is I have to refresh my phone here for my photograph, and so I think we're going to make the water about here, 1/3 up, so you can divide your. This is a Arches rough paper, 140 pound, 300 gram. It's the orange cover. I think I have some. Well, I had some pictures of the covers, but it's the orange cover, and this is a gummed block. So you can imagine this is like a thick block of paper here that you peel off one page at a time. Watercolor block. That's the Arches rough orange cover. And then you have 7 inches here. So if we break 7 into thirds, you can say 2, 4, 6, and you have an inch left over, and then you divide that into 3. So maybe we're going to say about, we don't have to be super accurate, so we'll say 4 inches, 6, 7. So if we go 2, 4, 6, yeah, I think if we go with the ocean at, if we turn our ruler around, if we go with the ocean horizon line at 2, 4, 6, and we have an inch left over. So if we go at 2 inches, we're fine. So if we go, and this watercolor block is I think it's a 7 by 10. Yes, 7 by 10. 7 by 10 block of paper. And then we go just 2 inches up from the bottom of the block, both sides like that. And we just put a little dash line there, and then we just go across with a light pencil line. And I have new lighting in the studio, so I'm hoping if I make a light pencil line, you'll see it. And I did some testing, and I think it does look good. You can see that. Yeah, it looks great. So you can see the pencil line here. And we're going to do next, let's do our mountains here. So we have a mountain range over here along the water that we'll do next, just to get that roughed in. And so if we wanted to, we'll take a little bit of artist liberty, and we'll make the mountain range a little smaller maybe than I'm seeing, just so that it's, I think it might look a little better. Although we do want to capture, if this is your vacation photo, I wouldn't take too many liberties, artist liberty. When you're trying to capture a vacation photo, you kind of want it to be, pretty close to what I'm thinking this way anyway. And again, you're the artist. You can, if it's your vacation photo and you're making this painting for yourself, you can paint it any way you want to. And then if you're going to put it up on the wall and put it in a frame and all that, fine, you can paint it any way you want it. It's going to remind you of your vacation and how wonderful it was and all these different things. So, that's where you can create it any way you want to. But let's say someone hired you and said, I want you to paint me a painting of my vacation photo. then you're going to want to stick pretty much close to the exact as what you're seeing, because in that case, you might give them the painting when you're done and say, this is the painting I created for you, and they're they're going to be purchasing it from you, and if they see something that looks drastically different than the photograph, then they're going to be upset and they're not going to want to purchase the painting. And that's if you're creating like a commission painting for someone. So there's all different situations. If you're painting it just for fun for somebody and they're not really, let's say it's not like a commission painting where a person's paying you to paint for them, well, then that's okay too. You can kind of take artist liberty and say, well, this is the way I painted it, and I hope you like it, and whatever, you don't have to worry about it. But let's just let's do this. Let's pretend that this is our own vacation photo. So now I'm going to pretend this is my vacation and I was in Australia and I'm painting this scene again. I'm going to paint it the way I want to paint it. And then right now I will take the liberties. I'm going to make the distant hills, mountain range much smaller than what's in the picture. So this mountain will become a molehill, and we'll just do that. And then we'll go like this. And I'm going to actually trail it down so that it comes down, touches the water, the hills, and then I'm going to pretend there might be a little inlet here where there's some just ocean, and then maybe the coast picks up again. We see like that. So that's my interpretation of what I think would look best, how I want to paint it, and then from there everything should work out good. We're going to do the two boats, of course, and then I mentioned too, there's a lot of great things you can purchase online. The Golden Mean calipers, you might see me work with these once in a while, but these are really great. So if you're painting a painting, you're kind of using your creative juices and creative liberties, you can, if you have a couple boats in the scene, you can say, well, might as well put them into the painting in a place where it's going to look like the optimum best. And most artists will all agree, professional artists, historians, people that are art collectors, they might say, yes, if you use these space divisions in your painting more frequently, the painting is just going to look better by default. So let's try it. Let's say, all right, let's make this boat over here. Let's start with one boat. We can even start over here. And so I'm going to say that this smaller sailboat is going to be right here. And this one's closer to the shoreline. It's about here. I'm just going to put the vertical sail. The sail is actually on a little bit of an angle, so right away I'm going to just sort of erase that a little bit. We'll get a ruler and make a sail in just a second. Let's get the space divisions correct. All right, so now we have this first space division here. It looks fine. We're on the Golden Mean space division. So that's good. That's the first sailboat. Then the second sailboat we're going to put over here, and it's the larger one, so we're going to come down here. It's closer to the bottom of the painting, but we're keeping the calipers like here, and that's going to be the second sailboat. All right, so that's really, really nice. That really looks good. Space divisions, and then we can even look at our, and we're pretty close with our space divisions for the Golden Mean here, so it's not too far off. So that water line here, the horizon line of the ocean, is looking good. It looks really very pleasant and pleasing looking. Now we can take a ruler, no big deal. We'll take our ruler and we'll just make our sails. And I'm thinking if I make my sail first, the mast of my sailboat first, that's going to help me to maybe paint or draw my sailboat in a little better, I think. So I'm looking at my photograph and I'm noticing that the mast of this sailboat is up about that high. And then this one, if I look in the painting, I'm seeing that this mast over here on this sailboat, which is larger and closer to us in the foreground, this mast is more straight. It's not as angled as this one, so I'm going to keep this one more vertical, almost perfectly vertical, just a touch this way maybe, but maybe almost perfectly vertical, plumb. And this one here, the mast over here on the right is higher than this one. So I just want to make sure I at least have this one. And if I even follow the angle, I'm going to go over here, take my pencil, I'm going to go over to my camera, my iPad over here across the way, and I'm going to rest my pencil up onto the screen and get the angle of how the angle looks from this to this mast, to the top of the mast. And I go like this, and then if I come down here, I keep the same angle. I just keep that same angle going like this and like this, and then that's like this, and then I just like that. And then I notice that this is about where it is for this top of this mast, like this. Okay, so now, again, I want to stick to the photograph is, very. I want to, let's say I'm using it as a guide and really kind of sticking to it pretty strictly. But again, I did change those. I did change the hills, the mountain range to make it smaller, and I did move the sailboats just a little bit to make it more pleasant and pleasing looking, so that there's space divisions here between sailboats and between the edges of the paper. Looks probably at its optimum best. Then we're going to do the sailboats. I'll do this one first. Oh, maybe I'll go over here. We'll do this one first here. So maybe these sailboats are looking pretty much level on the bottom. So I'm just going to make a level line, very, very light level line, and I'll make another one over here too. So I'm going to make 2 level lines for the bottom of the boats. We would want to have a boat like doing this. These are sailboats. They probably have engines in them and so forth, but they're not at high speed like this going across the water. They're pretty much relaxed. Probably they look like they're actually anchored down. They're probably anchored and relaxed, and the people might be having some dinner at sunset on the water here. And so it's more of a peaceful kind of scene, not too much action going on. And let's see here. Okay, so now I will start with this one over here. I like to do my drawings from left to right. If you're left-handed, you'd want to start your drawings over on this side of your painting, your drawing surface. You'd want to start on the right and work to your left. This way your hand isn't going over the pencil lines and smudging all the pencil lines everywhere. So I'm going to start over here. Since I'm right-handed, I'm going to start over here and then work my way this way. So I'm going to do my first smaller sailboat, and I can kind of see it's a slow, gradual angle up this way, and then the bow of the boat there, and then here is the stern of the boat, like so. And again, we're doing basic shape, and that's it. Basic shapes here. We're not doing anything too fancy. Okay. Okay, this one is same kind of thing. A little bit of like a curve. See how we have like that little bit of a curve there? Curve here. Now, I think what I could have done, actually here I made the bottom of the boat my pencil line that I made across this way. And for some reason I started with this as the top, which is okay. It's not going to really affect anything. So I'm just going to use this as the top level line. And then this here is going to go across level, even with this line, even across like that. And then as it comes up here, it comes up there like so. Then I notice that this part of the boat comes down this way, like that, and then trails off this way. And the boat does have a shadow under it like so. So I put that shadow there. And there is a bit of an angle on the back tail, the stern of the boat, like so. And there is a little bit of a cabin area that is above the main boat. And then we have, again, I'm not going to get with incredible details. I'm just going to do the other boom. There's a boom over here. And it comes out about to there. And then I'm thinking I will do a tiny, very faint line here from the mast down to the bow of the boat. And then from there, I think that's fine. And then over on this boat, the same thing, on this sailboat, I'm going to make a rigging line going down to the bow of the front of the boat. And I don't know, I don't see anything else really. There is another boom over here on this on this boat as well. So I'm going to put that one there. And it goes out almost to the back stern of the boat there. And that is about all the detail I'm going to do for the boats. I think that's plenty good. Once you start painting and you reference the photograph, you can maybe add a little touch of details here and there, but when we get our pencil drawing in, you can just get the basics of the drawing with your pencil lines, and then you're fine. And then from there, once you're painting and you're, let's say, finishing up the painting and you're doing the last bit of details for your boats, then you can add in maybe a touch more of details on the tops of the boats, maybe a figure or two, real tiny. We'll show you how to do that here too on this video. So stick with me here. This is just the beginning. We're having a really fun time. We're going to get into the painting next. So we're actually ready to paint, and we'll take a quick break just to relax for about 5 or 10 minutes. And at that point, we'll be ready to come back in and start thinking about mixing up our paints first, getting our color selection of what we want to use. And then from that point, once you select your colors, you're going to put them into your palette, which is always a good game plan. If you want to paint a painting and have it go a lot more smoothly, try to get all your colors you're going to use in selections of colors and mix them out onto the palette. You're going to maybe add more colors to your palette and mix more colors to get, to cover your paper. But at least you'll have all the colors here on your palette, and then you'll be able to match them up and go, okay, I use this here. Oh, I need more of that. I see what color it is. It matches. Good. I can get more in there. So you can always add more paint to your palette. But once you start your colors, you're good to go. You have all the colors you need, and then you're just a matter of maybe adding a few more bits of color that you need as you're going. But you'll see how it all works as we go. And let's get started. So just, we'll, again, 5-10 minute break, and we'll start with the painting. All right, so let's get started with the painting. Just over here to the right, I have a water bucket and a small sponge. So this is off camera just because I want to have the painting actually fill the video space here so we can see all the details of what we're doing on the painting. So you'll just know that I'm always rinsing my brush and tapping off excess water on the sponge. I also use a tissue sometimes to check water off with my brush. So sometimes I might be using a brush and I tap a little bit of water off on a tissue. So a couple of different things you can do. You can get, there's more ideas as far as that goes. You can use paper towels, or, some people I know use, their aprons, or if they have maybe a shirt that they use for watercolor painting, you can just take your brush and, tap it on your shirt or your apron or whatever. So as long as you're checking off water once in a while off your brush, that's really helpful when you're doing watercolor, because you're not always going to want to go onto your painting with a brush that's, flooded with water and paint. So it's kind of just a little strategic thing you can do when you're painting. To kind of have that little thing in the back of your mind. You always have an option to take a little bit of water off your brush when you're working. And in this painting here, I did want to add one more thing to the sketch, and that is a little bit of some light lines, sketch lines, just to kind of show the light in the picture. So I'm going to just say that the brightest light's going to be over here along the tops of these mountains here, and then but my cloud forms are going to be sort of on an angle. So we're looking at like an angle like this going across the page for the sky for the most part, but we might not make it so, in a sense, like design where we're having strips or stripes of light, but we just kind of want to know generally, we want to sort of keep the clouds and the sky washes like on a little bit of an angle like this across the page. That looks a little more interesting than maybe just going straight across the page like this. So we want to kind of keep an angle to the sky. It looks a little more interesting. And then once we kind of have that idea, we do a couple light pencil lines just to keep our self on track, so when we're starting to do the washes, we remember to do that, keep the lines a little bit on an angle. And then the water is fine. We can just go straight across with our washes. And I think what we'll do is we'll do the glazing technique, which is really simply we're going to cover this whole sheet of paper first with light wash of color. And then once we're done with that, we can then, after that, go over with darker washes. So I'll get a brush ready here, and I notice that I need to probably change out my water. I have a brush here that's sort of gummed up with some paint I didn't realize. So let me get some water quick here. So I'm going to change out my water quick. I'll use some handy bottled water here. Okay. Okay, and then we'll start mixing our colors. So this scene is kind of a lot of yellows, oranges, umbers. Let's go with some raw umber here. We'll mix some of that out, make sure it's smoothed out, and we have it's a nice golden sunset color. And then we have yellows. Let's use some cadmium yellow, some lemon yellow, cadmium lemon yellow, a touch of maybe some orange. We'll do some orange down here, cadmium orange. So I'm trying to keep these a little bit separated, but you can mix them a little bit here and there too. And that's going to be the orange and yellow colors, the really, really warm colors. Even some cadmium red. We're going to have some cadmium red here too. Again, I'm mixing out my colors on my palette. Then we're going to go with some cooler colors. We're going to have some French ultramarine blue and ultramarine violet. So we're going to want to have some of that with a little bit of umber in there to kind of gray that down a little bit. And that's going to be for our the upper clouds in the sky. So some French ultramarine blue and ultramarine violet should give us a really good kind of color with maybe even a little bit of alizarin crimson in there too. For the sky washes, maybe a little bit of blue too over here, some cobalt blue. So I think we have plenty of colors here to get started, and the predominant color is going to be the gold colors, the golden sunset colors. So I'm going to change my brush now. I usually pre-mix my colors on the palette with a round brush. This is a Raphael brush, Raphael Kolinsky Sable. And I have videos on brushes too that you can always look up. You just type in my name, Chris Petrie, brushes, and you'll see I have all my brushes on there. I kind of go over what they do, how they perform. We use synthetic brushes sometimes. Sometimes we use the Sable brushes. We use flat brushes like this, round brushes. We use varieties of brushes, so you can kind of see all the brushes that I use. Some I use more than others, of course. And so let's get the whole paper covered with crystal clear, clean water to start with, and just a light wash of clean water. No paint at all. Just we'll cover this whole page here, this whole watercolor paper with a light wash of clean water, nothing else. And what that does is that's going to be able, we're going to be able to cover the whole painting with that golden color, the golds and the reds and the oranges. We'll start out with the gold colors, and let's do that. Let's get the gold. Doesn't have to be like we're painting a wall in a house or something like that. It's just you want to get some of that color on right away. Then I notice I want to keep this white over here for the most part. So this section right here, I want to keep white paper. but I get a little bit of that golden color on there. And then right over here into the water, let's get the gold color right into the water. And you can kind of see it's a pretty simple process. We're not doing anything too fancy here. If you run out of a little color, you just go back in and you kind of know what colors you're going to use. So I'm just coating the whole paper with the golds, and then we're going to do some cadmium red too. Let's get some of that cadmium red in there. And again, we're going the way of the flow of the sky, like this. Like that. And again too, we're going to go into the water and get some of that beautiful cadmium red in here. Let's do that. Get some of that paint on there and then just move it around a little bit with your brush. You have to work quickly though now, so we're not going to take more than 5 minutes to do this. We're going to just do about 5 minutes of painting on this paper. Arches paper will give you a ton of time to work on your first wash here, your first glazing, so you don't have to rush too much. Take your time, but don't take more than 5 minutes to do your first wash, your first glazing, and that's all you really want to do. And then over here it's a little darker, so then you can start to work in some darker orange and yellow. And again, that's why I use Arches paper a lot for these type of paintings, because you can really have more working time to blend in your colors. And it's going to be darker up here, so let's even start to get some of that purple up there, like so. Darker up top here, blue. All right, so we might not even have to work as tremendously hard as we thought in the beginning of this painting. Let's move that paint around, get it on the paper. Same thing here, get some of that cobalt blue in the water. It's darker over here on the left side of the painting, and it's lighter over here. Over here it's lighter, obviously, because the lighter sky is over here. And then we can do some more of that blue over here and purple. So I'm just doing some blue and purple here. And then I rinse off my brush one last time. Good. Dry it off on the paper towel or your tissue, and then just a damp brush, and you want to just kind of blend things in like this. And I think that's plenty good. What do you think about this? This is pretty straightforward. We mix all our colors first, got them into the palette, and then we just did our basic fresh, clean, crystal clear water, a little light wash over the whole page, not too much water on there, just dampen up that paper the whole way over, and then you just work in your colors. Oranges and yellows first, and then you add your purple and blue over the top of that. Once you're kind of getting along into that, getting the yellows and golds in there and the umbers, then you just grab your purple and blue quick last and get those in the painting where you see the painting. It's darker over on this side of the painting and it's lighter over on this side of the painting, because we do have the sun is probably over here somewhere to the right, so there's brighter sky over here, means this is a little bit lighter up here. You can even take a couple little, with a clean paper towel or tissue, you could even do some light lines like this. And I think that looks fine. And we're going to go over this again with another wash or two. I think we might just leave it like this. I think this might look good. Let's see how it looks when it dries. It's going to be a little lighter now when it dries 100%. But let's take another break because we have to let this dry. Now, that's the big part with glazing technique. You hear me say this all the time on my channel. You have to let things dry, especially if you're using the glazing technique and you're wetting your whole paper like this and you're getting that whole wash on there. Your best bet now is to get a blow dryer and dry this off 100%. Or if you want to let it dry for a couple hours, at least a couple hours, you just come back maybe an hour later and touch the paper. And if you feel it's dry enough, you can go back in and we'll start doing the mountains and the boats. But you really have to let it dry, though, at least I would say an hour. But if you have a blow dryer, you can dry this off pretty quickly within 5-10 minutes. It'll be, completely dry. So it's up to you. I leave that up to you. You're the artist. And let's take a quick break now and let this dry. And I always mention too, if you enjoy my videos on my channel, you can always subscribe on the right-hand side below. It's that little button that says subscribe. You click on that. And all that does is just each time we make a new video on the during the week, you'll see it come into your YouTube homepage. And this way you'll be able to click on it and check it out and, you know, see what we're doing here, painting, drawing and painting. And if you like the subject or you like the painting and you want to watch and even join along with us and paint, then great, you'll do that. And maybe sometimes if you don't feel like painting, well, you can just watch the video. Again, watching videos helps your artwork come along tremendously well. So if you're a newer artist, welcome here if it's your first time here. But if you're a newer artist, watching videos helps you tremendously. I would advise watching as many videos as you can and you can fit into your schedule. And but of course, you want to get your, you know, drawing and painting skills going too. So you want to keep drawing and painting all the time as well. But if you're just, you know, tired, many times over the years when I've been painting, if I get too tired or I'm too busy, I just watch videos and I don't worry about it. I don't, you know, have to necessarily always pick up my brushes and paints. But you know, especially if I'm tired and I don't have enough energy to paint and draw, I just watch videos. And I'm always learning something new as I do that. So great to have you here. Thanks for watching. And we're going to get back started. Just once this dries, I'm probably going to use my blow dryer, dry this up quick, and then we'll clean up the palette a little bit and we'll get started again. All right, so we just got back from our break. And, you know, again, I always encourage everyone, if you take a break once in a while, like when you're going through your painting, just for 5 minutes even, or 10 minutes, you can sit down. If you stand up, or if you're standing up, maybe you can sit down for a few minutes and relax. It's up to you. But I always suggest definitely taking some breaks. I realize some of you don't need to take breaks. You can just work fine and your concentration's great all the way through. So, you know, you always do what you feel is, you know, right for yourself. You know, we're all different, each one of us. But I do find breaks kind of help me, because when I come back to the painting, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, I'm always having that consideration of lights and darks in my painting. So when I'm looking at this painting in particular, we're working from our vacation photographs. And I always just mention this too. We always, you know, you've seen me mention this numerous times if you follow me. If this is your first time here, again, thank you for coming by. And I'll always go over little juicy details like this on my videos with you, just to kind of interject some interesting thoughts about what we're doing here. And so I always mention, like in a painting, you're going to kind of want to think about darks and lights in a painting. So perhaps you might think of it as, this is our painting, and then I'll maybe use a China marker here. So usually we can use lights, medium tones, and darks in our painting. So in this painting here, I'm saying, well, we only have a little bit of lights here, really, like really bright lights, like the white of the paper here for the most part. You can consider this like white of the paper. There's a little bit of yellow in there, but a little bit of tone on there, but for the most part, that's light. So I consider that my brightest white color. So that would be, let's say, over here. So let's call this our, you know, our lights here. Our lights. And then next we have our mediums. And our medium is pretty much, the medium tones is the whole sky and water areas, pretty much, for the most part. So then we have our medium tones. Our medium tonal values, we can call them tonal values. Tonal values here. So these are our tonal values. I'm sorry about my spelling there. Neatness here, I don't have the neatest handwriting. So tonal values, medium lights, so our mediums are like this. So we can just kind of shade this in a little bit. So that's kind of like the medium tones on the paper. And then we have darks over here, so we'll call this darks. And when I kind of look back at the painting here and I say, well, where are my darks? My darks are going to basically be the mountains in the mountain range in the distance, and the boats, and the boat masts. So our darks are over here. So we have basically, if you want to break it down into just 3 simple lights, mediums, and darks, then you kind of have a more simplified form of, you can kind of break these down even further and say, well, there's kind of like a dark, and then there's maybe another kind of a dark there that's not quite as dark as this between the medium, and then between the light and the medium there might be another one here that's a little bit lighter. and then you have your light. And you can even add more to that. But for the simplest idea, it's just darks, mediums, and lights. So what do we have? Mostly all mediums. A pretty decent amount of lights in here, I would say. And then very little darks, just a little bit along the mountains and the boats. So then we kind of see this painting as, if you want to kind of give it a proportional idea of saying we have like a gallon. So there's a gallon of paint here. So we have a gallon of mediums. We have a gallon of mediums. And then for lights, we have about a quart. So that might be a quart here. And that's, I should say, lights. And then we only have so we have a gallon, quart, and then we have a pint here. And so the pint is the darks. Here. So it's darks. Lights. And then we have our mediums here. So that basically makes up this painting. A gallon, which is a lot of mediums, we can see, right? Tons of medium tonal values. Lights, about a quart worth. Over here, lights, and over here too a little bit. And then darks, the really, really dark darks, but only a small amount of those, a pint. So if you keep and you can use any of these combinations, you can switch them all around. You can make your painting all darks and split the other difference between the two. So just kind of like a idea of how you can use quantities of darks, lights, and medium tones in your painting. And if you kind of keep them in this type of quantity, you're going to turn out with a good painting. Like if you went with the whole painting darks, you might not look so good because you wouldn't really see any kind of contrast. But if you use all lights and maybe, a different amount of darks, maybe a medium amount of darks here. So you can interchange these, but this is basically just a formula you can use. Any one of these in any combination is fine. And this one I like a lot. I use this a lot. Medium, which is the most. Lights, a decent amount of lights, and then a tiny bit of darks. So that's kind of like how we're going to view this painting, as a gallon of mediums, a whole lot of medium tones. Lights, a decent amount right here. And then darks, just a few, the boats and the distant mountains here. So let's finish the painting. I think we're pretty much really well along here. And we're just going to go in and continue. We're going to just make sure I'll pour some more water here on in the bucket. Basically, we're using all darks here, so I may not have had to use water as much, but and I'm just going to use 2 round brushes, I think, to finish up with maybe another. I think I might use my let's see if I have that over here. Yes, I do. So basically, I'll finish up the painting with 3 brushes, most that I use quite often, and it's the round brush, which is the Raphael number 6 round brush, and then also my travel brush, which is a number 4 Da Vinci Kolinsky travel brush there, and then I'm also going to use a Alvaro Castanet needlepoint brush, which we'll use for the fine details of the boat. So between these 3 brushes, we can finish up the painting, which are more of the details of the painting. We did the first, of course, with our Da Vinci brush here, number 30 millimeter Da Vinci synthetic flat brush, to get all of our really large washes in there. So let's go for it now and keep working along here. I leave all my, we didn't really need to clean the palette here, I don't think, because we're going to use the same colors. We're going to use blue and purple. And then we have some umber over here, so we'll just mix some more umber in here. And blue and umber. And that should be good, actually, blue and umber, just to get ourselves started here with our boats. And the boats are just going to be quick little bits of wash, and we're almost done right there. And then we have another boat over here, sailboat, and let's just do the same thing. Then we can also add in a little bit of darker tonal value. So umber, purple. So we're using ultramarine violet by Winsor Newton, French ultramarine blue, Winsor Newton paint, and then raw umber, Winsor Newton paint. And I roll the brush around so I can get a good point on here. You know what? I'm gonna actually go over here and grab my needlepoint brush quick. This can give you the great fine details you need in your paintings. That's why I use these all the time, and whenever they wear out, I buy new ones. And there we go. We have a nice, let's get a dark in there. Even some burnt umber is fine to get that super dark French ultramarine blue, burnt umber, a little bit of purple in there, a little bit of burnt sienna. I would keep the same colors we've been using. Let's use some cadmium red there. Just as long as we kind of see that there's a really good dark under there, under the boat, for the reflection of the boat, like that, and that's good. And then I'll use my tissue, dry off the brush a little bit here, go back in here, and I'll get the same thing. I want to get a little bit of a darker dark under there. You can leave a little bit of light under there too. Just a little dark for the reflection. And I might do a little indication of the mast here. Just a tiny bit of paint there. I would not do much more than that. That can really ruin a painting when we try to go in and do some details at the end here, and it really goes bad because we underestimate what's going to happen. So the best thing to do is, when you're doing details at the end of your painting, try to just do as least as possible. Don't really get in there and do too much. You can see I'm just doing a few here. A couple little bits of dark under the sailboats, and I did the utmost of tiny spot on the paper of the mast here too, but just barely a little bit, and that should be fine. Then we'll go back to this brush again, our travel brush, and then this top portion of the sailboat is the cabin portion, like that. So we want to get that in there. And I think there's a bit of a cabin over here too. We can add a little bit of that, just a touch, like that. Okay. Now we have to be careful not to lean into our paint. We're just doing the boats, our sailboats, and we don't want to get too much of a problem if we lean into that. So I'm going to keep my hand off of anywhere near the paper. I'm just going to try to reach out with my brush and hold it far. I don't want to rest my hand on the paper now at this point. Although you could blow dry these dry. That's another technique you can use. If you do your sailboats first, like this, then you can use the blow dryer, dry these off completely 100% with the blow dryer. Then you can rest your hand on the paper and start working your mountains like this. And that will work too. And then you won't have to worry about smudging any paint. Instead of me stopping the tape and using the blow dryer, I'm just going to continue to work and just make sure that my hand doesn't rest back down into the paint where the sailboats are, because that can really have a problem. And I'm really careful along this coastline here. This can be another issue. You can always put a piece of tape across your paper. At this point, you can take a piece of tape. We could even try it, just so you can kind of see what you could do if you kind of feel you're a little bit tentative about putting in your distant shoreline and you don't want to go off course and kind of smudge down into the water. You can take some really good, I would use the best tape you can get. And in that case, if I do it, I'm going to use this tape, which is really great, frog tape or 3M tape. I think this is 3M, purple. 3M purple is actually painter's tape that professional painters use to paint walls and trim on the interiors of houses and commercial buildings and all kinds of good stuff like that. And if they don't want to paint over certain areas, they tape those areas first, like we're going to do right now. And then they just carefully press on the paper, on the tape right along, just along the edge where you're going to paint. You don't have to press the whole, tape down everywhere. Just along where you're going to paint, like this, right there. And then we can do that. And I can leave a little bit of white there. That's not a big deal. And we'll just go in and get some of our darks again, which are French ultramarine blue, ultramarine violet, raw umber, and we just keep going. And we're going to get our hillside over here, our distant mountains over here. And you can paint right on top of the tape, and there's no worries, you're not going to lose that beautiful edge along the water. And then you can do a little more like that. And we just kind of note that we definitely want to keep the these mountains dark all the way through and through, because the light's on the other side of the mountain range here. So the sunlight is setting on the other side of these mountains, so you wouldn't see any light spots on these mountains, on this side of the mountains. It's going to all be dark for the most part. So that's kind of what I wanted to make sure I think in my mind is, okay, the sunlight's behind the mountains, so we're not going to see any light. And once you're done, you can just simply lift up the paint, like tape like this. And there you have it. Perfect coastline with no smudges or anything. Is that working out good? I hope you're going to try that. And you can use any, I use the Pro drafting tape. You can use Pro drafting tape. Any kind of artist tape. Artist tape works good. And especially if you're using Fabriano paper, I don't think I've ever had anything, I've never had Fabriano paper tear at all when I'm using tape on it, because it's such a strong, really top quality paper. So I never have problems with Fabriano paper. And Arches. And we're using Arches, for instance, here. But Arches paper is incredible. I try to use it all the time. When I'm doing the best, when I'm doing my videos here, I'm going to use the best paper I can. I want it to look great for you. And now for my masts for my sailboats, I'm going to paint them in small. I'm going to, again, everything is pretty much dry on this paper, so I can rest my hand up above here. We did just paint this here, so I mean, that might not be. And I can always put my hand off to the side. And then now when I do my mast on my sailboat, I can just go little bits at a time, maybe like an inch or two, take a break, come over here maybe. And I just sort of work that line a little bit at a time. It's kind of easier to get a straight line if you can work it a little bit at a time. If you try to do the whole line in one straight run, it's going to be a lot more difficult. It's much better if you can kind of do a little bit at a time. And then you just darken up a spot here and there, and that gives you the effect of light shining and doing some interesting things. Now with this line here, I'm going to do the same thing, except this one I'm going to use my needlepoint brush, which gives me even a finer line yet. So I'm going to do this here, get my needlepoint brush, paint on there, then I'm going to dry off that paint a little bit on a tissue, just so I take some of that paint off, and then I'll do my I'll do my rigging line here, which is going to be quite a bit thinner than this mast of the boat here. The mast of our sailboat's much thicker than the lines on the. So what I'll do is I'll just use this, And I'll just carefully, lightly use this to get my rigging lines, and I can do a couple little spots there. Maybe this one is a little darker there, and then I lift up. And if you just do a few lines along that pencil line you did, that's all you need. And the same thing here, we have another rigging line on this boat. You might not see this one really, but let's just put a little something in there. And I'll just do a little bit of tiny, let's just do a little bit of lines there. And that's good. And then we're also going to do the booms here for the sails. And those are, again, we can do these with our needlepoint brush. Very, very fine lines. We don't want to get in there and make a big spot of color there, and all of a sudden we've gone too much, and then we have to start all over again, do the whole painting over. So if we just use a this needlepoint brush works perfect. And there we go, we have that there. And then again, we said we get some really good details here. There's some dark windows that we can get. That's in the sailboat there. And there's might be some darker little bits of color there too. Some darks for the windows on the sailboat over here on the cabin. And then another bit of couple of rigging lines, and then you could even do a few if you're daring like that, just a couple swooping down. I think that's good though. Again, not too many. I don't want to have a problem at this point. We've done all this hard work and it looks good so far. We don't want to have an issue right at the end here where we have a problem. So let's go in here and get a little more. There might be a few figures here on the boat. Let's get a few figures in, maybe a little bit lighter, not too dark. And then let's do some figures here. So we have a figure over here, perhaps maybe another figure down here. So in this sailboat, you can see a few figures. They're on the boat. You can even tap up a little bit, make them lighter, like that. And you might make another figure over here too, if you want. And I think this is perfect. This is like creating a beautiful vacation painting from your photos that you have from vacation. I think if you can get it to this point here, perfect. And then if you always wanted to, you could go with a few more, maybe darker clouds in the sky. That might be something you would experiment in the future with a little bit. But if you get that first wash on like we did, that's really the key. If you can get that beautiful first wash in there, that first glazing, then you're almost home free. Then it's just getting in that darker line of the distant mountains. And when you have that completed, and you have your sailboats done, and then your mountains in the distant mountains here, you will have a gorgeous painting completed. And again, you can always go over with some additional details. Tell you what, I'm going to take a quick break and I'm going to see if I can try to do a few more details to this, or I should say additional washes to kind of just, give it a little more impactful look to it. Maybe I'm going to go with a few more darker clouds up here. I think I'm going to try that. Again, watercolors experimentation. So we're going to try to experiment once in a while. If you get a painting completed and you think, I'm going to experiment and maybe do a darker wash somewhere on the painting, or maybe add some highlights or something like that, well, go for it. It's all about trying out new and different things as you go and having fun with it. So let's continue to have some fun here. We're going to try another few little, let's say, things we're going to just try to embellish this painting a little more with some more details, but not going overboard. So let's try it and see what happens. Again, I'll take another break just to relax for a few minutes, and we'll come back and we'll try to do a few more little things that can kind of spruce up this painting even more. All right, we're going to try a few additional washes on here on our painting and see how it looks. I'm looking for a different brush for myself, something larger, so I'm going to grab my, this is a number 12 round brush. You can see this is quite a bit larger than the number 6 we were using. So that's, I'm going to try to use a larger brush now to do these final few washes in the sky and in the water. So first thing I want to try to do is mix up a color of some purple. I think we're going to stick with purple and blue. So the same colors we used before, French ultramarine blue and ultramarine violet, Winsor Newton colors. And then some raw umber in there too, just a touch of raw umber. And let's go with a little extra. So let's mix up a little extra paint in there. Okay, so I've loaded up my brush with plenty of paint. And again, let's get a little extra in there. Make sure you mix up enough paint for the thing for the portion of the painting that you're going to do. That looks pretty good. Blue, maybe a touch of cobalt too, I think maybe. That would look good, I think. And some umber. All right, so a brush this size, like a number 12 round brush, holds a lot of paint and water. So, it does take quite a bit of paint and water to kind of get yourself a good bit of color into that brush. And of course, we don't want too much water in there. You can kind of see how there's not much water in here. It's mostly all paint in my brush right now. So what I can do is right now I can leave my brush just like this, and I'll leave it to the side, but actually let's leave it over here because we're going to use this in a second. But what I want to do next is I want to take my water container and dump out any water I have in there because I want really clear, fresh water right now. So now I pour into my water container fresh, crystal clear water. You can kind of see that, clear water. And then I'm going to use my flat brush again. And what I'll do is I want to just make a damp brush, not a load. This brush is not loaded with too much water, so I loaded up this brush right now, my Da Vinci 30 millimeter flat brush, crystal clear water in the brush, and then you take off some of the water on a tissue because you just want to go over with a damp brush here and just get yourself a light damp brush of water onto the paper, but just a tiny bit and only for a second or two. You don't want to go over this and over this and over this. Just a little tiny bit of fresh, clean water on your paper to dampen up that paper so that when you put on your darker clouds now, it's going to be a soft looking cloud formation and not too much hard edges. Okay, so now we're going to go back and pick up our brush that we just loaded with a bunch of really good paint, and I would say let's even add some yellow into that too. Just a little bit, but then you just have to take your brush and hold it and just start up over here. I would darken it up right over here in the corner and then take the brush and just gently, I start there gently and then go this way and then just do some scrubbing kind of motions like this. And just do it very lightly. Maybe we add in some more purple if you think the color doesn't look 100% good. Add in some more purple there, maybe even some more gold and red. It can't hurt to add multiple mixtures of colors. And of course, it's really important that we notice we wet the paper first, again with that little tiny bit of water, and it makes a big difference. And then here, we lighten up the wash now. I rinsed off my brush, took all the paint out of the brush, so now I have a clean brush right now. And then I just use this here for the lighter bits of cloud here. So we're going to see how those are lighter now. There we go. Bam. Look how good that looks. Just like that. And I think that looks even better yet than what it did before. And then what we're going to do now is the same kind of idea. We're going to take the colors, French ultramarine blue, raw umber, purple, French ultramarine blue, raw umber, maybe a touch of yellow. I kind of get it till it looks good, like the mixture looks pretty good. Then what we'll do is we'll dry off the brush now on a piece of paper towel or tissue. So what you want to do is dry off your brush really well and just leave a tiny bit of paint left on there. And then we're going to try to get some interesting water shimmers of light on the painting. And that's what I'm going to do here. It's a little darker over here, so I can start over here. It's a little darker over here along the coastal area. And this is again what, when you're using Arches paper, rough paper, you can get these beautiful shimmering bits of light. You could use a little bit of that there and a little bit here. And then you just gently touch your brush down to the paper very lightly and just drag your brush across the paper. And that just gives you that light effect of the shimmering light across the paper, like that. And if you go over that a little bit, no problem. A little bit of tissue, just wipe up if you go over a spot or two, no big deal. But I think that looks pretty good, and I think we could use a little more darker over here. So I'm going to go over a little bit of a light wash here just to kind of darken it up over here. The sky is darker up here. So if your sky is dark up here, you want to kind of keep it the same. You kind of want to keep your sky the mirror effect. So your sky is reflecting down into your water. So over here it's darker. And then maybe across here there is a little bit lighter over here as it goes this way, like that. So you just kind of mirror this effect here and then this way. So your light is like here and then up here like so and like that. So you kind of see I did a little bit of an angle over here, and that's really the whole thing. That's the whole thing here, the whole deal. You're just working in glazings, light to dark. You start out with your first glazing as we showed in the very first part of the video, and then as you start out with your light washes, you build over the top of that with your darker washes, and it's as simple as that, and you have to let each one dry. And then of course the key to this final bit of darks to this painting is just for the upper sky area, you wet the paper just a tiny bit with fresh clean water, tiny little bit of wetness to just dampen the paper a little bit, and this way it kind of smooths out those washes for the clouds. And then for the water area, you don't want to really add any water down here. You just want to use the dry brush technique and drag your brush with thick paint across to give yourself that shimmering light effect on the water. And I think when you do these few bits of techniques and methods for your painting here, you're going to have an absolutely fantastic time of accomplishing it and doing it well. And if you have to do this painting 3, 4, 5 times, do this painting as many times. If you really enjoy this painting and you like this painting, that's what I'm, if you don't like this painting so much and you think this is not really my cup of tea, no big deal. But if you do want to recreate this type of effect for your paintings and you want to try this technique, the glazing technique, and you want to create some beautiful sunset type paintings like this and ocean paintings and seascapes, by all means, try this one painting 4 or 5 times until you really kind of get the feel for it. Watch the video over and over again until you can even write down the steps if you have to, or, you know, when I used to work from videos, I would sometimes take 5 sheets of paper and I would do the first sheet with the first step. Then I'd start the next sheet and just put the steps of the second sheet on there. So it doesn't look like a finished painting as I'm going, but you just write down on your sheet of paper as you're doing it what you're doing each step of the way. And then that helps you too if you want to work that way. I've done that numerous times. It really is helpful if you want to, but it's up to you. I know everyone here, especially a lot of you, are already really strong with your watercolor techniques, so you really don't probably need to do something like that. But if you're kind of newer to watercolor, you might find some help with that if you kind of plan out your painting a little bit ahead of time, kind of like we plan out our colors first. But in any case, have a wonderful time painting. And I always mention too, if you want to leave some comments in the comments section, please do. Everyone really enjoys the comments. People always learn from those things, so newer artists learn a lot from you. You know, when they're looking at the comments section, many of you have a lot of experience, so you put in some helpful hints in there. And I always like to follow the comments and try to chime in when I can. And so we'll see you on the next video. Again, thanks so much for joining along with me here on my channel. And we're going to just keep doing paintings week after week, month after month, and year after year. We're all getting better at the same time with our watercolors. So happy painting, everyone. Enjoy the journey, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.